We can start inshallah. AbuBilaal Yakub. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين. اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم to everyone. I think we are on session number 13. And we'll get started inshallah. What I want to do is continue with the Hikam, and then we'll go to the Isaguji, and I want to do conversions, contradictions and conversions today, so then we are done with the second operation of the mind. So inshallah next week I want to get started on syllogisms and the third operation. So in the Hikam we stopped at number 104. So 105, he says لِيُخَفِّفًا, or in yours it says لِيُخَفِّف ألم البلاء عنك علمك بأنه سبحانه هو المبتلي لك فالذي واجهتك منه الأقدار هو الذي عودك حسن الاختيار. He says that in order to ease the suffering of trials and tribulations on you, in order to find ease from the times of difficulty that you are in, it is to know that that trial, that tribulation, that suffering, that bala is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That He has placed this affliction on you. فَالَّذِي وَاجَهَتْكَ مِنْهُ الْأَقْدَارِ, as that which you encounter from Him of His qudra, of fate, of destiny, what you encounter from Him, that which you encounter from Him, هُوَ الَّذِي عَوَّدَكَ حُسْنُ الْإِخْتِيَارِ. He has placed it in such a way that it accustoms you to sound decision making. The reason why He has put you in a state of tribulation, we said before, with regards to being in a state of constant vigilance, in that state of trial or state of tribulation, that destitute state that you are in, is in order to keep your mind active, in order to keep you vigilant and not to fall into stagnation. So what He has now given you in terms of this trial and tribulation, in it there is the khair of good decision making, because this will help you. Every trial that you say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So every trial that you go through, it being a trial, and then you succeed, and then the next trial comes, and then you succeed, and maybe the next trial is a little bit more difficult, you succeed over that, then those things that you already overcame now become simple things. You can always work through them. You know how to make a decision on them. Man dhanna انفكاك لطفه عن قدره فذلك لقصور نظره. Whoever thinks that Allah's gentleness or His kindness, His mercy is separated from His ordainment, when He's ordaining on you any sort of trial, any sort of tribulation, whoever thinks that He is separated from His mercy and His gentleness and His kindness is separated from that, then that is a fault in your perception. You've not given Him His due right. You've not given His attributes their due measure. لا يخاف عليك أن تلتبس الطرق عليك. And yours says الطريق. It's the same thing. الطرق is just multiple pathways. That's the plural form. الطريق is singular. وإنما يخاف عليك من غلبة الهوى عليك. He doesn't fear for you. He's not concerned for you that the paths that lead to Him will confound you, or the path that you have taken might confound you. There are many ways to reach the divine presence. There's no one single, like it's only my way, it's only my aqidah, It's only my madhab that is on the right. There's no single pathway. We're all on the same highway. We're all taking different lanes. And some people might be taking the side roads, and some people might be coming in through the countryside, and some people are flying in. But we're all headed towards the same destination. So there are multiple pathways. He's not concerned that the pathway will confound you. There are some pathways that are incorrect. There are some tariqas that are not right. When I'm saying tariqa here, I'm not referring to like Sufi tariqa. I'm referring to tariqa as a pathway, as a road. There are some that will lead you astray, undoubtedly. Even those that lead you astray, ultimately you will find your way back if you are sincere in your search for him, to reach him, his proximity. What he fears for you, وَإِنَّمَا يُخَافُ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ غَلَبَةِ الْهَوَىٰ عَلَيْكَ. What he fears for you is that your whims will defeat you on the pathway. It's not the pathway that is at fault. It's your own whims, your own dhan. When you start working things out and thinking you know everything about everything, and so you know your own religion. This is people when they come and they start opening Sahih Bukhari and they start taking in their own fatwa from that. Oh no, the hadith says we do this, the hadith says we do that. People come up with their own methodologies. That's your own whims. These will overtake you. سبحان من ستر سر الخصوصية بظهور البشرية وظهر بعدمة الربوبية في إظهار العبودية. Glory is he, the one who has concealed the secrets of this elite status of being in his proximity. That's the elite, that is khusus. He has concealed that elite status in the manifestation of humanness. You see, he created mankind from the angelic genus, and he honored Banu Adam, and yet gave Banu Adam these human qualities. We all have to eat, we all have to sleep, we all have weakness, we are all susceptible to disease, we're all susceptible to mistake and error. We have these human attributes, but he has hidden the eliteness in that when you work them out, when you cleanse yourself, when you rectify them, you see, then you start rising up the ranks. So glory to him who has concealed the secret of khususiyah. To khususiyah is to part from the amniyah. You see, the unique, like you're one in a million, the unique from the common. When the common people are indulging in decadence, then you, who is on a path of righteousness, you are a khasa. You see, so he's concealed it in there. وَظَهَرَ بِعَدَمَةِ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ فِي إِظْهَارِ الْعُبُودِيَّةِ. And he has revealed the greatness of divinity in manifest servitude. To recognize divinity is not to be a chosen one of Allah, like the way the Jews claim, we are chosen ones. It's not to be the chosen ones. No, it is to serve Allah. That's the pathway to reaching the divine proximity. I have a poem I wrote in my book, The Crucible of Abstinence. I'll read the last passage of that. In those dreams, I saw that life was benign. When awake, I saw that servitude was its design. But only when I served did I taste the felicity of its wine. Here I found a dream worth living and a life worthy of dreams. And thus did it dawn that all I had to do was to seek the divine. There's a dream there's a life that I am dreaming of. And there is a dream that I am living. But in the wakeful state is when I realize that the only pathway is servitude to him. So if I want to seek his proximity, then and taste the felicity of that wine, that sweet taste at the end of it, then the only pathway is to serve. طالب ربك بتأخر مطلبك ولكن طالب نفسك بتأخر أدبك. Don't demand of your Lord. You're working on something, you did your istikhara, you're trying to get something to be fulfilled. Now you're waiting for the outcome. And then, you continue supplicating, or like he said in the previous end, you've got this arduous, intensive supplication, and you're waiting for the manifestation of what you wanted from him. Rather than demanding that, he's saying, focus more on the delay of your adab towards him, your manners, your sense of discipline. Pay more attention to that. Because like he said in the previous one, He has already guaranteed a response for you in a manner of His choosing, not of your choosing, at a time of His choosing, not of your choosing. So stop worrying. You've already given your dua to Him. You've already supplicated to Him. Focus more on your discipline, on your etiquette, on your manners. متى جعلك في الظاهر ممتثلا لأمره ورزقك في الباطن للاستسلام لقهره فقد أعظم المنة عليك. When He places you in the outward state, obedience to His command, and He places you in the inward state, submission, in a state of submission to His qudra, to His power, His majesty, this is an immense blessing from Him to you. An immense blessing that He gives you obedience in the outward state, and He gives you a sense of khushu'. You see, awareness, submissiveness to His power. Because many people don't get that. They might get one, they might not get the other. There's some people who might be performing the outward action, but then they are in a state of heedlessness in the inward. You know, like you're praying salah, but you're thinking about your work or something. Or there are people who might have that inward sense of submission, but then don't have the physical ability to do an act. You see, they're not able to perform the act. But here He gives you both. That's an incredible blessing. In that He allows you to do both, that's an incredible blessing. لَيْسَ كُلُّ مَنْ ثَبَتَ تَخْصِيصُهُ كَمُلَ تَخْلِيصُهُ. Not everyone who is established as the elite, as khusus, someone who is, like you see a sheikh, just because he's got the title sheikh, does not mean that he is, cleansed and he is basically on the pathway to paradise. He's on the stairway to heaven, right? Not everyone who is established in that sense or established at a certain rank or degree is perfect in their cleansing. We all have, something to work on. So don't just don't assume. I've seen people like this that, they'll just graduate from like Medina University or something, and then all of a sudden they're like holier than thou, like they're the purest, like their aqidah is perfect because their iman is perfect because they just learned the best aqidah on the planet, the only good aqidah or something like that. Or they'll be praying like 5 times a day, and so, all their sins have been forgiven. Don't ever, this includes the individual also, don't perceive that of others, and don't also perceive it of yourself. To think that because you've done this or because you're doing a certain word every day, like you're perfect now, everything is good. Not everyone who has been established is perfect in their cleansing. Everyone has got something to work on. This is now the wird, this one and the next one. So we spoke about the wird, the warid, and the wurud before. So he's expanding a little more on this. Now listen. لا يستحقر الورد. Let me read it from here. لا يستحقر الورد إلا جهول. There is only the ignorant one is going to dismiss the wird. Only one who is of an ignorant mind will look down on the word, on the dua, on the supplication, on this ritualistic thing. Like you can do a word of the Quran every day, or you can do a word of, let's say, like the tasbih, like La ilaha subhanallah, alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. You can do that every day. Only the ignorant one, the fool in this case, will dismiss that, or will dismiss what the intrinsic value of that. And so he explains, Al-waridu yujadu fi daril akhirah. The warid, which is now the fruit of it, the blossom of the wird, what comes from the wird, is it manifests in the hereafter. You see, its blessing in terms of its reward will manifest in the hereafter. وَالْوِرْدُ يَنْطَوِي بِانْطِوَاءِ هَذِهِ الدَّارِ. And the wird itself, it vanishes with the vanishing of this realm. So that the physical action or the tasbih or the dhikr And even, by the way, seeking knowledge is also a wird. Like if you like dedicate an hour or half an hour and then study one ayah of the Quran at a time, that's also considered by the ulama as part of dhikr. That's also a dhikr. Like what we're doing here, this is a dhikr. It's a circle of dhikr, but it's not the dhikr of like doing tasbih. It is the dhikr of ilm, right? So we're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through these means. So you can even have a dhikr like that. All of that is part of this domain. It's a physical action. Okay? That is going to vanish with this domain. What remains is its blossom or its essence, which is the warid, the essence of it. That's what remains, and that manifests in the hereafter. So you can say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. You can say it every day, but it's not going to blossom anything in this. It might give you a sense of peace and tranquility or something like that, but it's got no tangibility in this domain. But Subhanallah, the glory of Allah, Alhamdulillah, all praise due to Allah. La ilaha illallah, there is no Allah, there is no God except Allah. AbuBilaal. There is no God except Allah. Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. All of that, you will see its manifestation on Yawm al-Qiyamah. وَأَوْلَى مَا يُعْتَنَى بِهِ وَأَوْلَى مَا يُعْتَنَى بِهِ مَا لَا يُخْلَفُ عَنْكَ وُجُودُكَ وَعَنْكَ وُجُودُهُ. The first of this, which is the warid, the first concern, the first mode of concern, the first thing you should be concerned with is that which does not cease to exist. Means you should not be concerning or thinking about the wird. You should be thinking more about the warid. The wird is just a means to the warid. That's what you want to arrive at, because that is boundless. That is going to continue into the akhirah. The wird is just temporal of this domain. So really, you're really concerned. What he's stating is a principle, right? What you like Pascal's wager, right? To wager that there is God is more, sensible or rational than to wager that there is no God. So this is he's stating it as a principle. The warid is more useful, more beneficial, it's everlasting. The wird is temporal. So by nature, you are always concerned with that which lasts longest than that which is temporal. And so based on that principle, he's saying, Al-wirdu huwa talibuhu minka. The wird is what is requested from you. Wird is requested from you. Wal waridu anta talabuhu minhu. The warid is what you request from him. The fruition, the blessing of your wird is what you request from him. But the wird is demanded of you. To perform the act, that's what's demanded of you. The fruition of the act is what you request from him. وَأَيْنَ مَا هُوَ طَالِبُهُ مِنْكَ مِمَّا هُوَ مَطْلَبُكَ مِنْهُ. Where is what you ask for from him? Where is what is sought from you? وَأَيْنَ مَا, where is it? وَأَيْنَ مَا هُوَ طَالِبُهُ مِنْكَ مِمَّا هُوَ مَطْلَبُكَ مِنْهُ. Where is what is sought from you as compared to what you seek from him? How can you compare the two? And so what he's saying is that the warid, which is the blossom of the wird, is of incredible benefit because it comes from him. He is the one who makes it, gives it the blessing. He is the one who puts barakah in the act. The act is performed by you, but the act is demanded of you. He will not give you the blessing in the act if you don't perform the act. And therefore only the ignorant one will dismiss that, or will look down upon somebody who is doing that. You see, like someone who is doing dhikr, and then they look down on him and say, bid'ah. You see, the Prophet didn't do tasbih like this. You see, why do you do that? The Prophet didn't do like this with the beads. So it's bid'ah. You don't know what blessing that person is receiving in that. Only the ignorant will dismiss that. Oh, it's not part of the fard, so you don't do it. Yeah, the word is not part of the fard. But then you dismiss that, you don't know what blessing has been put in there. The wird is what he asks for you from you first. Only when you perform the act, then only will you realize the blessings that he has put in that. ورود الأمداد على حسب الاستعداد شروق الأنوار على حسب صفاء الأسرار. The arrival of amdad, or in yours it says imdad, bihasabi. So al-imdad bihasabi, the arrival of aid, of sustenance, of providence, is dependent upon the readiness to receive it. The arrival of aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dependent on the readiness to receive it. That aid can come in any form, not just physical form, even in the form of knowledge. People want to know, right? You want the truth. You want to arrive at an understanding. Well, you have to prepare yourself for it. You want to understand the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to ready yourself for it. There is a cleansing that is involved, a physical cleansing, a spiritual cleansing. There is a certain intellectual cleansing also that is involved for you to be able to receive that understanding. شروق الأنوار على حسب صفاء الأسرار. The rising of the lights are dependent on the purification of the innermost. You want the nur to enter your heart? Well, you have to start cleansing the heart first, because it is kawkabun. You see, it is a celestial, like a celestial object that glows. It is a zujaja. It is a glass sphere, like a celestial object. A glass by its nature, it's in its raw form is opaque. You see, like this glass is opaque. Although I don't know if this is glass or it feels like glass, like a cheap glass. But glass, if you look at glass when it is mined, like soda ash, it's opaque in form, and then it goes through a process of removing of the impurities from it. Particulars are removed, and then it goes into the furnace, and it's heated at very high temperatures. It's aggravated, and then it is blown into shape, and then it is polished, scrubbed down, it's cleansed until it now becomes transparent so that light can pass through it. You see? So that's the process of light entering the heart. Light will not enter the heart if the heart is a hard rock shell, or if it's got like grease and oil and blemish and mud and all these dirt and impurity on it. Light will not pass through. So you want nur with which you are able to understand. Well, you need to cleanse your innermost. You need to reach at that innermost to cleanse that. What's the time? What's the time? Okay, should we? Let me see here. Okay, let's stop here because there's like a theme that is going on from number 114. And then he's going to talk about Salah, which will be a very interesting section. Yeah. Okay, so let's stop here, inshallah. We'll continue with from 114, inshallah, next week. Okay, let's go to the Isaguji. So we spoke about the propositions last week, and I know some of you have complained that it's a tricky course, it's a bit difficult. But that's because it's actually not a difficult course. It's a very easy course. The reason it seems difficult is because it is a technical subject, And you've got terms that you kind of have to remember how they're used and applied. So it's just a matter of understanding the terms. Otherwise, you're doing logic regardless. And once you understand the terms as you go through the practice of it, you'll grasp it. It will take time. It's not something we can even master in these, however many sessions we're going to be doing. It's not something that can be mastered, but it gives you an insight and it also triggers a sense of curiosity. But I will say this, if you understand the first section, which is to do with terms and definitions, then the rest really becomes very easy because it's just a construct. The second and third operations of the mind are reliant on the first operation. If you don't get that first operation right, then everything else will be wrong from there. Terms and definitions. So terms, basically you just need to understand this. Terms are either clear or unclear. You see? So a term is either clear or unclear. And the majority of breakdown in communication is due to terms not being clear. Now, when you get into more advanced logic, you will get like more finer particulates of like what kinds of, like you can have unclear terms, can be ambiguous, can be vague, right? And then there are others also. So you can have ambiguous terms or vague terms, and the two are not the same, they're different. And then in the end, you can have terms, like clear terms can be applied in different settings, like in the legal system, you have to have clear terms, concise terms. You can't use ambiguity in a court of law. It has to be definitive. You see, when you start applying this in day-to-day life, you will be able to now determine, are you precise or are you being vague? You see, so vague and ambiguous, for example, like tall, if I use the word tall, he's a tall man. Tall is not an ambiguous term. You know what tall means, but it is a vague term because you could ask, how tall is he? You see, so tall in relative to what? That's like a vague term. So even in that, you've got things that are specific and things that are common, like majaz, for example, metaphoric terms. That's a different category of terms. Then you can have metaphoric terms that are khasa, specific to a setting. Some that are am, they're commonly used metaphorically. But if you get that and you understand how definitions are built, which are built using the 5 predicables, the 3 main predicables, the universals, and then the 2 which are accidental. Just the 3 main predicables. The jins, the genus term, the specific or the type, no, or the differentia. The differentia, what differentiates from the genus will give you the specific. And then you have the common term. You have the term that you're looking for. And then the accidentals, not so much. You don't really need those, but they will help you be more specific. So if I say book, that's very vague. Which book am I referring to? So then I can go to a specific and say a book on tafsir. Well, there are many books on tafsir. Then I can say tafsir of Tafsir al-Jalalain, for example. Okay, so that's specific. Well, Tafsir al-Jalalain could have, several volumes. I could then get more specific and say volume number 3. You see, so you're moving from a broad genus into a smaller one, into a smaller one, into a small, by differentiating. You see, you've differentiated tafsir books as specific from books of hadith, books of fiqh, books of so and so. They all fall under the category of books. And then Tafsir Jalalain, you have differentiated between Tafsir of Al-Razi, Tafsir Ibn Juzay, Tafsir Suyuti, Qurtubi. You have differentiated them. And then you differentiate volume number 3 from the other 20 volumes. And then you differentiate, you see? So once you get that, once you understand how to get to the specific term, the more specific you can get, the better your definition will be of a thing. Whether you're defining it to someone else or you're just defining it to yourself. Once you've constructed a definition of a thing, then you can apply it to any setting, to a proposition, whether it is a singular, or it is universal, or it is particular, or it is indeterminate, or it is those are categorical propositions, or it is disjunctive, a conjunctive proposition like conditional, where you're going to use the word and, like a conjunction in between, or you're going to use disjunctive proposition where you will use either or, either this or that. And then we'll come down to contradictions. So let's look at the contradictions then. He says in the text, وهو اختلاف القضيتين بالإيجاب والسلب بحيث يقتضي لذاته أن تكون إحداهما صادقة والأخرى كاذبة. So this is the difference. A contradiction is a difference between two propositions in an affirmation or negation, such that in and of itself, one of them must be true while the other is false. So a contradiction, you've got two statements in one. A contradiction is a proposition that's got two statements in which one is an affirmative, the other is negative, and one has to be true, the other one has to be false. You can't have both being true and you can't have both being false. كقولنا زيد كاتب زيد ليس بكاتب. Like our statement, Zaid is a writer, Zaid is not a writer. So you've got two propositions there. One is affirmative, Zaid is a writer. One is negative, Zaid is not a writer. So they're contradicting each other. So you have a contradiction. Which one is it? Are you saying Zaid is a writer or are you saying Zaid is not a writer? So one of them has to be true, the other one is false. Both the statements cannot be true. Zaid cannot be a writer and not be a writer at the same time. If you go back to your earlier rules, going way back, we looked at the three laws, right? You had the law of identity. A thing is what it is. It can't be something else. A thing is what it is. If you're saying it's a book, it's a book. It can't be a football. And then the law of non-contradiction. A thing cannot be and cannot be and not be at the same time. It's a bit tricky on that. So a thing, you cannot say that the thing is and is not at the same time. There are very rare exceptions, but that's something that you will look at like in more advanced logic. And then there's the law of excluded middle. It's either this or it's that. It can't be both. So either Zaid is a writer or Zaid is not a writer. He can't be both at the same time, right? Or it's non-contradictory. Either Zaid is a writer or he is not a writer. But now you have a contradiction. So one of these has to be true. That's essentially what a contradiction is. A contradiction is two statements in a proposition. One of them is true, one of them is false. One of them is affirmative, the other one is negative. ولا يتحقق ذلك إلا بعد اتفاقهما في الموضوع والمحمول والزمان والمكان والإضافة والقوة والفعل والكل والجزء والشرط. And this does not occur unless they correspond with each other. And he's listed these 10. Now these 10 are not the 10 categories. These are different. These are qualities. They are more like predicates. These are the predicates you will look at. So the contradiction cannot happen unless they correspond in the subject, meaning the subject is the same. You're talking about the same subject. The predicate is the same, meaning whatever you're predicating to the subject is the same. So Zaid is a writer, Zaid is not a writer. You're talking about Zaid and you're talking about writing. You see, the two have to be the same. Or in time and in place. You were talking about right now in this place. If you're referring to Zaid is a writer right now, but is not a writer next week, then that doesn't apply. That cannot be a contradiction because this can be true and next week he could not be a writer, cannot also be true. So all these have to, and there are many more actually, because this is what was used in traditional logic, but now they don't, they have got like, you can have many other conditions that fall under there. So I think that's why they've put etc. in there somewhere. I read, I think it's in the footnote. Yeah, it's in the footnote. They put like etc. in there because you can have multiple of those. So al-mawdu', which is the subject, al-mahmul, which is the predicate, al-zaman, which is the time, al-makan, which is the place, al-idafa, which is the relation, al-quwwa, which is the potentiality, al-fi'l, which is the actuality, al-kullu, which is the part, the whole, al-juz'u, which is the part, and then ash-shart, which is the condition. And then ash-shart can continue onwards with shurut, other conditions as well can be applied in there. So they have to be the same. Each statement that you make, if I say this is a book and this is not a book, well, this as the object has to be the same object. The subject is the same. Then the predicate I'm associating with it being a book has to be the same. I'm referring to a book. I can't say this is a book, this is not a ball. The predicate is different. That's not a contradiction. Now, a contradiction is necessary to be used in logic because it can be useful when you're trying to disprove a proposition. So when someone makes a proposition and you want to disprove that, and if you look at the chart that I gave you, you will be able to see how you can use that. So you look at the one that I shared last week. You would use the affirmative to disprove the, you'd use the affirmative universal to disprove the negative particular. And then you would use the affirmative particular to negate the universal negation. You see, so you can use one to negate the other. And there are rules. These are going to list out the rules. So when someone makes a statement to you, or you hear a statement, or you're just trying to figure it out yourself, you're doing your own reasoning, you can actually examine that statement in its truth or falsehood. And if you find that it's false, how do you disprove it? Because when you want sound epistemology and you have a proposition in your mind and you're doubtful of that proposition, well, you need something that will give you proof against it before you change your position. Otherwise, you can end up jumping back and forth internally between two propositions. You see, and this can cause you to have indecisiveness. A lot of people are indecisive because they don't have solid proof of this and they don't have solid proof of that. Meaning they don't know how to apply a valid contradiction to whatever proposal they have in the mind, whatever they're working out internally. They don't have something to valid, or they don't have anything to have valid proof, or they don't know how to validate a contradiction in order to change their position. Or a conversion. How do you convert a proposal in the mind? That's the next topic we'll look at. So these are the rules now he's giving you here. Oh, okay, you know what? First, before we go to the rules, let's look at the footnotes. Number 29 and 30. Where's 29? Okay, so this principle is the basis of contradiction. Both statements, one must be affirmative, the other one negative. One must be true, the other one false. The first one can be false, the second one has to be true. Or if the first one is true, the second one has to be false. One must be true, one must be false. Both cannot be true, both cannot be false, both cannot be affirmative, and both cannot be negative. Both contradictory propositions cannot conceivably be true, nor both be false. Rather, one alone must be true and the other must be false. For a singular proposition, so we said that there are four categories of propositions, categorical propositions. There is the singular, makhsusa or shakhsiya, and then there is the kulliya, and then there is the juz'iya, and then there is the muhmal, the muhmala. So there is the singular, like Zaid is a writer, that's a singular proposition, you've got a singular entity. Then there's the universal, all humans are animals, that's a universal. And then there's the particular, some humans are not animals, that's a particular. And then there is the indeterminate, like they've given the example, the human is an animal. It's indeterminate as to how much of a quantity. Are you referring to the whole population? Are you referring to some of them? It's indeterminate, but it is a proposition and it is true, right? So for a singular proposition, makhsusa or shakhsiya, contradiction is valid only if the two propositions differ in the qualitative component. So you've got the kayf and the kam. The kam or kamiya is the quantity and the kayfiya is the quality. So the quantity is like the subject. If I say Zaid is a writer, Zaid is the quantity. The writing is the quality I'm associating to Zaid. So if you say apples are red, then apples would be the quantity. I'm talking about the entire population. If I say some apples are red, then, right, that's the quantity. Some apples. So that's the quantity, that's the kam. And then the kayf is the quality, red. I'm attributing a quality to it. So the contradiction is valid only if the two propositions differ in the qualitative component, i.e. affirmation versus negation. They must correspond in all other aspects. The conditions, the stipulations as stated above, in all that, the 10 that he has mentioned here, al-mawdu' wal-mahmul wal-zaman wal-makan wal-idafa wal-quwa wal-fi'al. Now, so and let me continue and then I'll come to that. For example, Zaid is a writer, Zaid is not a writer. It would be contradictory in assuming, this statement would be contradictory assuming all aspects were the same. So assuming that all aspects were the same, the subject is the same, the writing is the same writing, the place where he's writing, the time he's writing, all that is in relation to what he's writing, the potential to write, the actual writing, the writing of the whole or writing part of whatever he's writing, the conditions about the writing, it's all same. I mean, he's using the same paper or he's using the same pen, it's all the same. So is a writer and is not a writer, that's the quality. You see, so you're attributing a quality. So and so is beautiful. So and so is not beautiful. So is beautiful, is not a beautiful, that's the quality. You're attributing a quality, or you are removing, de-attributing a quality, or attributing its antithesis, its opposite quality. You see, so that's the quality, that's the kayf. That has to be different. So you cannot have two statements by saying Zaid is a writer, Zaid is a writer. There's no contradiction there. What are you contradicting? Right? There's no contradiction. One has to be different. However, if the first proposition referred to the writing of English while the second referred to the writing of Arabic, then both could be true or both could be false, and hence would not be a contradictory proposition. So this would not be a contradictory proposition if we were referring to the Zaid is a writer in English as the first statement, and then Zaid is not a writer in Arabic. There is no contradiction because the qualities are different now. See, the predicates are different. The subject is the same. What is attributed is different. It's differing. So one statement, both statements can be true. Both statements can be true. He can be a writer in English but not a writer in Arabic. But then both statements can also be false. Like I'm saying he's a writer in English when he doesn't know how to write English, or I'm saying he's not a writer in Arabic when he knows how to write in Arabic. Both statements can be true or both statements can be false. You can't have a valid contradiction there. Another example is the ayah in the Quran. This is from Surah Saba. And the disbelievers say, the hour will not come upon us. Say, no, indeed by my Lord, it will come upon you. This is in Surah Saba. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَأْتِينَ السَّاعَةِ. The disbelievers say, the hour is not coming on us. The hour is not coming. So the hour is not coming. The hour is the subject, and the coming is the predicate. So the same predicate and the same subject. قُلْ بَلَا. Say, rather. See, Allah is contradicting the statement now. See, so now He's going to give you a contradiction in here. قُلْ بَلَى وَرَبِّي, by my Lord, لَتَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ, it is coming to you. So they're saying the hour is not coming. No, the hour is coming. Same subject, the hour, same predicate, the coming. The quality is different because one is qualifying it as not coming, the other one is qualifying it as coming. And it's a very interesting ayah because when we go into syllogisms, if you can write down this ayah and just break it down, you will be able to understand when we go into the syllogisms. Because when he's given the contradiction here, he then gives proof. He then gives a reason. And there is a syllogism that can be derived from that. So he says, لَتَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ. Then he says, عَالِمِ الْغَيْبِ, he has knowledge of the unseen. لَا يَعْزُبُ عَنْهُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Nothing is absent from his knowledge. Even the weight of the smallest divisible particle. If you look at the translations, you will see the weight of an atom. That's a bad translation. That's a wrong translation. Dharra is not an atom per se. Dharra is actually the smallest indivisible particle. The smallest indivisible particle. And this was developed in Ashari Kalam, which was they were talking about atomic theory way back when. And then the Europeans discovered it recently and they started celebrating. Anyway. So when they discovered the atom, somehow the translation of dharra became atom. And then it just stuck there. You see, but what dharra really means, mithqala dharratin, the weight of the smallest particle. Because later on they found that, you can actually divide an atom into protons, neutrons, electrons. And say, that becomes the smallest particle then. And then they found, you can actually break that down and then you get like quarks. And you can break that down, you get like neutrinos, or is it neutrinos into quarks? Something, I forgot. And then you can break that down and you can break that down. They've gone smaller and smaller, I think several levels down until now they've got like string theory, which is apparently the smallest. So it's still a theory. They don't know if there's something smaller than that. But that's what a dharra. So this is very, very interesting when people start refuting, the Quran says the atom, but now we've discovered this particle and that. No, the Quran doesn't say atom. Dharra is like one of the meaning of if you remove the ta marbuta there, you get the dhara only. Dhara is a verb which means to sprinkle, like dust. So smallest particles, small particles or particles of dust, the smallest that you can possibly conceive. So he's saying he has knowledge of the unseen. He has knowledge, not even something as small as the smallest indivisible particle in all the heavens and the earth escapes his knowledge. وَلَا أَصْغَرُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ وَلَا أَكْبَرُ إِلَّا مِنْ كِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. Not the smallest, not the largest thing, except that it is in a clear register. It's been recorded. He knows about it. So this is the challenge he's throwing at them. So you're making the statement that the hour will not come. Where is your reason? How are you arriving at that conclusion? See, this is the fallacy that I spoke about before that causes people distress. They take a proposition, then they conclude the proposition without actually breaking it down. Without going through the process of reasoning to arrive at a ratification. See, someone just makes a proposition and you take that. So they're making a proposition, ours is not coming. How did you arrive at that? What's your process? This is what Allah is saying. Are you fully aware of what's going on in the heavens and the earth? Not just the earth. That you figured out all the materiality, you know all the physics and the math and everything. Do you know about the spiritual domains? Do you know what's going on in the alam al-amr? Do you know every single particular detail? All 7 heavens, not just one of them. Do you know the greatest and the smallest? Do you have a record of everything? See, they cannot even measure time, which is very interesting because they'll speak about space-time, but they don't know what time is. And then they'll say, well, if you go near the black hole, the time becomes longer. And when you go out of the black hole, the time becomes smaller. And then you do like this, it does like that. And there's no proof for it. Really, there's no, it's all mathematical, it's all done on paper. They've got no, it's all theoretical. But they like to conclude that this is the truth. You see, this we have the truth. Believe in science, brother. You see? But it's a very interesting ayah when you actually expand it. Because how do you know? How do you know that it's never going to end? You don't know. You can't measure time. You don't know when it began. How will you know when it will end? You don't have point A and point B. How will you measure what's in between? You can't do a measurement of a thing if you don't know where it starts and where it ends. But so anyway, that's a like a contradiction in there. That's the singular affirmative is contradicting the singular negative. So the subject in there you can see is the same. As-sa'a is the same subject, and then it's coming, the hours coming and not coming is the same predicate. The quality is different because one is qualifying the hour as coming and the other one is qualifying the hour as not coming. So because the quality is different, there is a contradiction that takes place. And so one of those statements has to be true, the other one is false. So how do you know which one is true, which one is false? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the proof right there. So when you read the argument that follows after that now, you can know which one is true, which statement is true. Obviously, the second statement is true. The contradiction is true. So they're saying the hour is not coming. Allah is saying, no, rather, the hour is coming. Because I have knowledge of the hour. I know everything that there is in the heavens and the earth, even the smallest particulate. I have everything in a clear record. Therefore, my statement is of greater authenticity than your statement because you don't have all this knowledge. So you're lacking in your truth. It's just a speculation that you're making. So that's this. Let's look at the explanation they've given on that because that was my explanation. The first proposition is negative, singular. Negative, singular. The hour is not coming. The second proposition is affirmative, singular. The hour is coming. Both correspond in every aspect and perspective. They differ only in the qualitative component, the kayf. Hence, the two are contradictory. One must be true, the other false. So after the ayah quotes the disbeliever's proposition, Allah responds immediately with bala, no, meaning He's negating it, He's contradicting them to indicate that theirs is false. He then follows it with its contradictory proposition, which must therefore be true, namely that the hour will surely come upon you. He, Most High, also emphasizes its veracity further with an oath. By my Lord, Bala, Qul Bala wa Rabbi. By my Lord, the hour will definitely come. Now this is different from this other ayah, which is in Surah Al-Anfal, right? So you killed them not, yet Allah killed them. And you threw not what you threw, but rather Allah Himself. This is when they were in Badr, during the battle of Badr. The Prophet ﷺ took some sand. He stepped out of his tent, he took some sand, and he sort of, threw it it was a symbolic, like a gesture. And he said, Shahatil wujuh, let their faces be humiliated. Afterwards, then the ayah came down because the Muslims gained victory. And because of that, some of the kuffar who are fighting, they started getting dust in their eyes, it disoriented them during the fight. So the ayah came down, Surah Al-Anfal, فَلَمْ تَقْتُلُوهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ قَتَلَهُمْ. You did not kill them. Rather, it is Allah who killed them. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ. You did not throw when you threw. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. Except that it is Allah who threw. What are they saying here? Yeah, there is no contradiction here. So there is no contradiction here. Why is there no contradiction? Because though the predicate is the same, the subjects are different. So you did not kill them, Allah killed them. You did not throw when you threw, Allah threw. The subjects are different. So there's no contradiction here between the negation of the messenger's throwing and you threw not, and its affirmation when you threw, as the first proposition deals with the perspective of the effect of the throw, namely death, while the second proposition deals with the act itself and its form, namely the actual throwing. So when he says, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ, you did not throw when you threw, that's an affirmation. بَلْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى, but then it's Allah who threw. The first is dealing with the actual act of throwing. So that's affirmed, right? It's a true statement. The Prophet did throw the sand. But the second, Allah threw the sand, is also true because that is referring to the effect of it. And that's demonstrated in the first portion of the ayah. It's not you who killed them. You were just a means. You are just the one wielding the sword or throwing the spear or shooting the arrow. You were just the means. It is Allah who took their life. Had He wished, He would have given them victory. That's a possibility. Muslims always forget that. You see, we see it, the Battle of Badr, but then we always forget. Yeah, we got victory, but had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed, He could have given the Muslims defeat. He could have given the kuffar victory. And this is what an ayah like this would remind the Muslims. And if you look at the ayah, ila akhir al-ayah, the rest of the ayah, He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we tested you with a trial that was husn. That was a good trial to remind you, to remind the believers. Victory does not come because of what you do, it's because of what He does for you. Right? But in terms of the proposition that is there, you can see that there is no contradiction between the two to say that the Prophet's throwing was false because Allah says, no, it's not the Prophet who threw, it's Allah who threw. No, there's no contradiction. It's that now the predicates are different. The subjects are different and the predicates are different. The throwing of the Prophet is different because the throwing of the Prophet is a physical cause. But then Allah is the one who manifests the cause and its effect. You see? So it's Allah who made it happen, in other words. Now they come to the rules. What's the time? Okay, good on time. So now here the rules of contradiction. فَنَقِيدُ الْمُوجَبَةِ الْكُلِّيَّةِ إِنَّمَا هُوَ السَّالِبَةُ الْجُزْئِيَّةِ كَقَوْلِنَا كُلُّ إِنسَانٍ حَيَوَانٌ بَعْدُ الْإِنسَانِ لَيْسَ بِحَيَوَانٍ. So the contradictory proposition of an affirmative universal, a mujaba affirmative kulliya universal, can only be a saliba juz'iyya, a negative particular. Such as our saying, every human is a creature. Well, they said creature, it should be animal, hayawan. Every human is an animal, some humans are not animals. So one is contradictory to the other. All humans are animals, some humans are not animals. One is true, the other one is false. All humans are animals. The other one is contradictory, which is false. Some humans are not animals. Well, what are they? Plants? Right? You can't say some humans are not animals. So that becomes a false statement. وَنَقِيدُ السَّالِبَةُ الْكُلِّيَّةِ إِنَّمَا هُوَ الْمُوجَبَةُ الْجُزْئِيَّةِ كَقَوْلِنَا لَا شَيْءَ مِنَ الْإِنسَانِ بِحَيَوَانٍ بَعْدُ الْإِنسَانِ حَيَوَانٌ. So the contradictory proposition of a negative universal turns into a particular affirmative particular. So negative universal is contradicted by a affirmative particular. So that chart that I gave you, if you look at that, you will see at the bottom there is use A to disprove O, use O to disprove A, use E to disprove I, use I to disprove E. So universal affirmation, that's A is contradicted validly by a particular negative. So all humans are animals is contradicted by some humans, particular, some humans are not animals, negative. All humans are animals, universal, affirmative. Some humans are not animals, particular, negative. And the same is true on the other side. A universal negation is contradicted by a particular affirmation. Universal negation, particular affirmation. Universal affirmation, particular negation. So affirmative always gets into the negative, that's a contradiction, and a universal always gets transformed into a particular. So all apples are bad, some apples are not bad. If I want to make a statement, I say all apples are bad, and you say, no, hold on, that's false. Well, why is it false? Then you can make a contradictory statement on that and say, some apples are not bad, right? If I say, all apples are red, that's not a true statement. Some apples are not red. Or I might make it a negative universal and say, no apples are red. And you can say, contradict that and say, well, some apples are red. And then you can prove it, right? So that's how, the contradiction works. That's basically the primary rule. And then there are other rules on that also. Is there a footnote on this? Oh yeah, there are footnotes, okay. Number 31. Previous page. So the first one, which is affirmative universal into negative particular. Affirmative universal, negative particular. With respect to determinate propositions, contradiction is not valid by the reversal of the qualitative component alone. For example, all animals, okay, let's just use what they're saying. Every creature is a human. Is an affirmative universal proposition that is false. If you reversed only the qualitative component, it would become the negative universal proposition. No creature is human. This statement is also false and therefore cannot be the contradictory proposition of the first statement. Rather, one must reverse its quantitative component as well, so as to become the negative particular proposition. Some creatures are not human, which is a true statement, and hence the contradictory proposition of the first statement. This does not preclude the fact that sometimes the reversal of a qualitative component, kaf alone, might result in one true proposition and one false one, such as every human is a creature, no human is a creature. Yet this occurs only because the predicate of the first statement is more general than its subject and cannot be used to extrapolate a general rule of contradiction that can be consistently applied to all affirmative universal propositions, as proven by the previous example. Okay, so likewise, right. So the determinate propositions, which are the singular, the universal, and the negative. The singular, universal, and the particular, right? Then you've got the indeterminate. So indeterminate is handled slightly differently, and they'll explain this here. The determinate, these three, you cannot convert them by only switching the qualitative component. You also have to switch the quantitative component. So the example that they're saying, all animals are human, you cannot just change the qualitative and say, no animals are human. Both statements become false. One of them has to be true. All animals are human, the qualitative is all animals, right? So you can't just switch that and say no animal. Sorry, what did I say? No animal is human. You can't just switch that, because then you've got both statements as false. Rather, you have to change the quantity as well. So the quantity is remaining the same. All animals are human. All animals are not human. It's not done. You have not done anything here. You've just gone from one extreme to another extreme, and both statements are false. You don't have a true statement in there. All animals are human. No animals are human. That doesn't make sense. If you change the quantity now from all to some, then you can have a valid statement. So instead of saying no animals are human, you then say some animals are human, right? So the false statement is when you said all animals are human. That's the false statement. But you can change the quantity of that to contradict it and say some animals are human. So instead of saying all animals are human, which is false, now you've rectified it and said some animals are human. Now you have a valid proposition, which is true. Rather, you would say it's true. A true proposition. Likewise, for a negative universal proposition, a negative universal such as no animal is human, contradiction does not occur by reversing the qualitative component alone, as that would result in every human is a creature. So it's the same thing. If you say no animal is human, and then you just change the qualitative and say all animals are human, then you've got two false statements. You have to change the quantity as well. Some animals are not human. Right. Resulting in some animals are human, which is true and hence contradictory to the original false proposition. But this paragraph is excellent, actually. Everything you want to know about contradictions is in this one paragraph. If you just grasp this, that's it. You've understood contradictions. So therefore, a contradiction is not valid between two affirmative, two negative, two universal, two particular, or if any aspect differs between the two propositions, such as its subject, predicate, time, place, state, object, potentiality, condition, stipulation, wholeness, partiality, relativeness, all that. All those descriptives that you would give it. You can't have a contradiction if both statements are affirmative. You can't have a contradiction if both statements are negative. You can't have a contradiction if both statements are universal or if both statements are particular. If any of those apply, you can't have a contradiction. In order for you to make a valid contradiction, in other words, the opposite of what is being said, a valid contradiction, you have to switch. If it is a universal, then the contradiction should be particular. If it is a negative, then the universal should be positive or affirmative, right? Finally, contradiction is very useful in establishing a proof by affirming the falsehood of its contradictory proposition, or in disproving a false claim by affirming the truthfulness of its contradictory proposition. That's the sum of it. That's what contradictions are for. And they're very useful, incredibly useful, because we get into contradictions every day. Every day we get into contradictions with others, with even ourselves. And sometimes we're trying to justify whether what you know is what you're doing is right. If you're contradicting yourself, or you're contradicting someone else, or someone else is contradicting you, we're always getting into contradictions. We're always making decisions, either this or that. We're always making propositions every wakeful moment. We're either affirming things or we're negating things. This is right, this is not right. You see, it's lunchtime, it's work time. I have to pick up the kids. Wait, there's still 15 minutes. I don't have to pick up the kids now. That's a proposition. We're always making propositions. We're always making conditions which are either conjunctive or disjunctive. We're either making and conditions, or we're making either this or that conditions. You see? So if it's time to pick up the kids, I'll also pass by the grocery store, pick up some groceries. So when it's time to pick up the kids, I'll go and pass by. So that's an and proposition, right? It's a conjunctive. If the time for picking up the kids comes, I will also go and pick up the groceries. You see? Or either this or that. I don't have time. I can either go pick up the kids or I can go and get some groceries. Which means I'll have, now you work out the proposition in your mind. Okay, so wait, which one is a priority now in this case? Okay, I have to pick up the kids. I'll pick up the kids first and then I'll go and see. You're always doing this. This is part of your working. What we're studying here is just to understand what is that called. When you're doing that, what is it called? To understand it better. So that when you're now executing it, you're aware of it. You're aware of the mind's operation, how the mind is actually applying these things. Because we're doing it in a state of ghafla. We don't know what we're doing. We're doing it, but we don't know what we're doing. And because we don't know what we're doing, we don't know whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Right? Okay, so this is now the determinate. Wait. There's one more footnote. Number 32. Okay. So an indeterminate proposition, which is a muhmala, in which you can't determine the quantity, you don't know whether it's talking about the whole or it's talking about the parts, is effectively a particulate determinant. So you will treat it as a particulate. You will not treat it as universal. So therefore, the contradictory proposition of the human is a creature becomes no human is a creature. Because it's particulate, affirmative, it becomes universal, negative. So in anything that is indeterminate, you can't determine the exact quantity of it. You will treat it as a particular and you will convert it into universal. Because you don't know what the quantity is, and so you will contradict the whole population of it. I mean, this can be a problem also sometimes, because if somebody says the apple is bad, and then, you don't know which, are they talking about the whole, or what are they talking about? So you might end up contradicting universally, saying no apples are bad. Well, there are some apples that are bad. So you might end up, you have to sort of, this is where now, human reason comes in to reason it out. But you can make a proposition like that and then contradict that and then build like an argument from that to argue and reason it out. So the last piece here, والمحصوراتان لا يتحقق التناقض بينهما إلا بعد اختلافهما في الكمية لأن الكليتين قد تكذبان كقولنا كل إنسان كاتب ولا شيء من الإنسان بكاتب. And two determinate propositions cannot be mutually contradictory unless they differ in quantity. Otherwise, both universal propositions could be false, such as saying every human is a writer, no human is a writer. So you can't have, you can't have universal and universal. Two statements cannot be both universals in their quantity. One has to be particulates. So if I say every human is a writer and no human is a writer, I've taken the whole population, all and all on this side as well. So all in all, you can't have a contradiction in there because you're referring to the same quantity. And likewise, والجزءتين قد تصدقان كقولنا بعض الإنسان كاتب بعض الإنسان ليس بكاتب. And two particular propositions could be true, like saying some humans are writers and some humans are not writers. There's no contradiction there. Both statements are true. Some humans are writers, some humans are not writers. Both statements are true. But if I say all humans are writers and no human are writers, that's also, both statements are false, because not all humans are writers, that's true. And not all humans are not writers. Some humans are writers, right? So you can't have the full quantity, or if the quantities are full, especially when you're having two universals and two particulars. You have to have one universal, one particular, or one particular, one universal. So that's just the final rule on that. Let's do the acts real quick, and then, because I really want to finish this section so we can get to syllogism, because when we get there, that's when you'll start understanding what the propositions are. So al-aks is basically conversion, or turning in one into the other. It's basically switching the subject and the predicate, switching the places of the two. وهو أن يصير الموضوع محمولا والمحمول موضوعا مع بقاء الإيجاب والسلب بحاله والتصديق والتكذيب بحاله. It is basically for the subject to become the predicate and the predicate to become the subject in the statement. So whatever statement you're giving, basically you're turning the subject into the predicate and the predicate into the subject. While, and this is as a condition for converting a statement, the inherent truth or falsehood must remain, or the inherent affirmative or negative must remain. That must remain in place when you're converting just the place of the predicate and the subject. Yeah, so footnote number 33 here. The underlying principle of conversion is that truthfulness or falsehood must be retained, otherwise conversion is not valid. If both the subject and the predicate of a proposition are singular, then conversion is valid by switching the subject and the predicate alone, while retaining its qualitative and quantitative components. For example, Abu Hafs is Umar, Umar is Abu Hafs. You see, you can convert a statement like that. Someone can, like, yeah, so Abu Hafs is human, as Abu Hafs is Umar. The subject is Abu Hafs, Umar is the predicate. Now you can switch that around to say Umar is Abu Hafs. So now Umar becomes the subject in the sentence and Abu Hafs becomes the predicate. Both statements are true, they've retained their truth, and both statements have retained their affirmative. Or you can say Zaid is not Amr, and that can convert to Amr is not Zaid. So Zaid is the subject, is not Amr, negative is, the predicate is negative, can convert to Amr is not Zaid. You see, so now Amr becomes the subject and Zaid becomes the predicate, and both statements are negative, they retain their negative, and both statements they retain their truth. All affirmative propositions convert to affirmative particular propositions. All affirmative, singular, universal, particular, they all convert to particular, affirmative. They retain their affirmative. All negative, that's split into two. We'll come to that. Regardless of whether the original statement is universal, particular, indeterminate, or singular, unless both the subject and predicate are singular. Unless it's like what the first section they say, you know, Abu Hafs is Umar, Umar is Abu Hafs. Because it's singular to singular, just converting the singular. But all other affirmative propositions convert to affirmative particulars. So you look at the chart there, I've put down there, A to O is not convertible. So affirmative universal cannot be converted into a negative particular. And then E to I, that's a mistake. That's a mistake there. If you can just rectify, I don't know how you rectify on, but it should be not convertible. The not is missing there. It should be not convertible. E to I is not convertible. Just please, if you can rectify that. So you cannot, a particular affirmative cannot convert into a negative universal, or negative universal does not convert to particular. So it doesn't, the conversion cannot take place like this. It has to take place like this on that chart. So affirmative to affirmative, negative to negative. They have to retain their negative positions and they have to retain their truth or falsehood positions. So the examples that they've given here, an affirmative universal. Every human is a creature converts to particular. Some animals are creatures. Every human is an animal, some animals are human. You see? So universal converts to particular. Both are affirmative, is, and both are true. You've converted the one predicate into the other one's predicate. Since were it to remain universal, it would be every animal is human, which is not true like the original statement. Yeah. So the reason why you convert is that when you see now the negative of its universality to contradict it is not working, you can convert the statement to make it valid. Instead of contradicting the statement, you can convert it. So every human is a creature. If you were to keep it in its universal position by saying every creature is human, that would not be correct. You have to change the quantity. Every human is a creature. Some creatures are humans. Every human is an animal. Some animals are humans. The affirmative particular converts to affirmative particular. Some plants are edible, some edible things are plants. The affirmative indeterminate converts to affirmative particular because the indeterminate is treated as a particular. So the bird is a creature, converts to some creatures are birds. Affirmative singular, Imam Shafi is a renowned jurist, converts to affirmative particular. Of the renowned jurists is Imam Shafi, or one of the renowned jurists is Imam Shafi. So any affirmative statement, universal, singular, particular, indeterminate, they all convert to particular. So when you're thinking about a universal statement and you want to, let's say, iterate it in a different way, and you want to maintain its validity, its truth, then you have to understand, what am I referring to? Is it a universal? Am I speaking about the whole group, or am I speaking about some? You see, and in many cases, this is generally how you would be speaking in any case. Like you'll either be referring to all, or you will be referring to some. All apples are bad. You can, oh no, that doesn't work. I want it to be true. Well, okay, we can use it in its false as well. Like I can say all apples are bad. For me to convert that, I have to say all things that are bad are apples. That would be a wrong conversion. You see, because the first statement is universal and it's affirmative. The second statement is also universal and affirmative. For the conversion to be valid, I have to maintain the affirmative of the first statement, and it has to come in a particulate state. So some things that are bad are apples. That's how I would convert it. All apples are bad. We're talking about the apples. All of them are bad. But no, I'm not talking about all things are bad. I'm talking about apples. Apples are some things among all other things. So the conversion to be valid, I would have to say some things that are bad are apples. The first statement is false. The second statement is also false. So the statement has retained its falseness and it has retained its affirmative. The conversion is valid. Okay? Now it's a matter of disputing that. So in some cases, a contradiction may not work until you convert it. That's the point I'm trying to arrive at. You might find difficulty in contradicting a statement, but you might be able to convert it and then you're able to disprove it, right? Okay, so والموجبة الكلية لا تنعكس كلية إذ يصدق. Oh wait, the negative propositions. Yeah, the footnote continues. So that was the affirmative. Now the negative universal proposition converts to negative universal propositions. For example, no Muslim denies the message of Muhammad converts to no one who denies the message of Muhammad is a Muslim. Likewise, nothing of fornication is permissible converts to nothing is permissible from fornication. So any negative universal converts to negative universal. Negative singular propositions whose predicates are also not singular. Okay, so like Khalid is not a coward. Also convert to negative universal. For example, Khalid is not a coward converts to no coward is Khalid, though both statements are false, right? So, but then both statements are false and both statements are negative. So negative universals convert to negative universals. And then negative particulars convert to negative universals. So it just works the other way against the affirmatives. All affirmatives convert to affirmative particular. And then all negatives convert to negative universal. That's essentially how you would remember it. وَالْمَوْجُوبَةُ الْكُلِّيَّةُ لَا تَنْعَكِسُ كُلِّيَّةً إِذْ يَصْدُقُ قَوْلُنَا
إذ يصدق قولنا كل إنسان حيوان ولم يصدق كل حيوان إنسان. The affirmative universal proposition does not convert to a universal. That's essentially what we just explained. Affirmative universal does not convert to a universal. Since we can, in our statement, every human is an animal is true, while every animal is a human is not true. You see, the truth has to be maintained or the falsehood has to be maintained. We say that every human is an animal, that's true, but every animal is a human, that's not true. Every animal is not human, that's not true. So universal cannot convert to universal. بل تنعكس جزئية لأن إذا قلنا كل إنسان حيوان يصدق بعض الحيوان إنسان. Rather, it converts to a particular, جزئية. Since when we say every human is an animal, the statement some animals are human is true. So it has to convert into a particular. When we say all humans are animals, that can convert to some animals are humans. The truth of the statement retains. فإن نجد شيئا موصوفا بالإنسان والحيوان فيكون بعد. So this is his proof now. He's giving you the proof of it. This is mutabaqa. See, we spoke about mutabaqa in reality. It's corresponding with reality. فإن نجد شيئا موصوفا بالإنسان والحيوان فيكون بعض الإنسان حيوان بعض الحيوان إنسانا. For indeed we find such a thing in reality as human and attributed or described as human and as creature. We see that in reality, such that some of these creatures, some animals are humans, and then some are dogs and some are cats and some are whatever, right? So we can see that in reality. والموجبة الجزئية أيضا تنعكس جزئية بهذه الحجة. That's the proof that he's saying. This is my proof. So similarly, the affirmative particular converts into a particular. The affirmative particular converts to a particular. The universal converts, affirmative universal converts to a particular. Affirmative particular converts to a particular. By this proof, بهذه الحجة, by this evidence that he has given in the first paragraph. And a negative universal proposition, وَسَالِبَةُ الْكُلِّيَّةُ تَنْعَكِسُ سَالِبَةٍ كُلِّيَّةٍ. A negative proposition converts to a negative proposition, universal. Negative universal converts to negative universal. وَذَلِكَ بَيِّنٌ بِنَفْسِهِ فَإِنَّهُ إِذَا صَدَقَ لَا شَيْءَ مِنَ الْإِنسَانِ بِحَجَرٍ صَدَقَ قَوْلُنَا لا شيء من الحجر بالإنسان. This is evident in and of itself. Since if we say no human is stone, then our statement no stone is human is also true. That's a negative universal into a negative universal conversion. No human is a stone, no stone is human. Negative universal, negative universal. Both are true and both can be converted. Okay, last statement here. والسالبة الجزئية لا عكس لها لزوما لأنه يصدق قولنا بعض الحيوان ليس بالإنسان ولا يصدق عكسه. The negative particular has no necessary conversion. There's no wajib conversion in it. Because some creatures, some animals are not human, you can convert that to say some humans are not creatures. There's nothing really in that. Some apples are bad. Some apples are not bad, some apples are bad. Both are true. There's no necessary conversion taking place there. So the negative doesn't really have that much of a conversion. Number 34 footnote, is that? That's 34, yeah. The same ruling applies to an indeterminate proposition as it is effectively a particulate proposition, since a creature is not human can also be true, and it has no conversion per se when you say a human is not a creature. Both statements are false, right? So, alhamdulillah. We'll get on qiyas next week. I kind of rushed through this, I'm sorry, but I wanted to really finish this because we are kind of, the syllogisms are a much broader category. There are many examples that they've given. And I also want to go through, I want to dedicate a separate session for fallacies so that, Bismillah. But what I would say you could do here from propositions is just make a chart or make a table, just like what I've done. This is my own. Just make a chart or a table, because he's giving you just the straight pieces. They're not actually that complex. That's what I'm saying. Don't get hung up on the terms that he's using so much. Just try and grasp the general concept of it. So when you look at propositions, qadaya, so you see you have propositions, and propositions are either categorical, okay, or they are conjunctive or disjunctive. So you've got categorical or conditional, propositions, either categorical or conditional. Categorical propositions are either singular, universal, particular, or indeterminate, those four. Conditional propositions are conjunctive or disjunctive. They have the and union. They have the either or union, one of those. You can have an and but this but that, that's a conditional. That's a conjunctive. And then you can have the either this or that. That's a disjunctive. That's it. That's propositions. Then you've got the breakdown of that. Affirmative, singular, negative, singular, affirmative, universal, negative, universal, affirmative, particular, negative, particular, affirmative, determinate, particular, indeterminate. So you have that breakdown on there. Then you've got the contradictions, which is did I miss anything in this? Oh yeah, so in the conjunctive propositions, you've got luzumiyya, and then you've got ittifaqiyya, something that's lazim, that is by necessity, and something that's just coincidental, right? Like someone says, if it's raining, then the King of England is old, right? If it's raining, then the King of England is old. Well, both statements are true, yes, but they've got no logical correlation with each other. Yeah, it is raining. Maybe you can see that outside the window. And yeah, the King of England is old. So, but there's no, that's ittifaq. The truth is there, but it's coincidental. The two are not really related to each other. So it's luzumiyya or that. Then you come to the disjunctive, and in the disjunctive you've got basically exhaustive and exclusive. So you can actually make a chart of that disjunctive propositions, totally exhaustive and mutually exclusive. That's the most concise. And then only exhaustive, not exclusive, or only exclusive but not exhaustive. You can just do the chart of that, and you will have like a Rubik chart. So mani'atul jami' wal khuluwa ma'an, or it is mani'atul khuluwa faqat, or it is mani'atul jami' faqat. So you can either have exclusive and exhaustive, or only exhaustive and not exclusive, or only exclusive and not exhaustive. That's it. Just if you just break it down and you remove all the extraneous stuff and just look at that, at the chart, and then when you're applying it in reality, just examine where it is that, or what it is that you're applying. And basically you have contradictions. So that's propositions. That's it. That's as far as propositions. And then contradictions, you've got Um, so you've got the mujiba kulliya and that converts to that. So you in contradictions, you've got the universal affirmation contradicts or is contradicted by the particular negation. So universal is contradicted by particular. And basically, you can make another chart of that. If you don't want to use mine, you can just make like a box chart of that. Universal contradicted by particular, always. And then affirmative contradicted by negative, always. So universal affirmative contradicted by particular negative. Universal negative contradicted by particular affirmative. That's it. Contradictions, that's all you have to remember in that. A universal is contradicted by a particular, and a affirmative is contradicted by a negative. One has to be true, the other one has to be false. Both cannot be true and both cannot be false. In the contradiction of it, you have to examine the quantity and you have to examine the quality as well, the subject and the predicate. And then you've got the conversions, and the conversions is basically in the chart that I gave you there. The contradictions go X like this. All right, affirmo, affir, A and O, A and O, I and E. It goes across. That's contradiction. Conversion only goes in a straight line. Affirmative converts to affirmative. Negative converts to negative. That's it. So go through the text and make your own charts. Don't rely on my chart. This is like I even made a mistake on that. So don't rely on my chart. Make your own charts so that you can understand it while you're drawing the chart, while you're putting these pieces together. You can understand them yourself, and you can refer back to them. So when you're now doing a study of something, like you're looking at an ayah of the Quran, similar to like what we looked at, you will understand more than you will be able to understand exactly what it is that you're doing there. Anyway, let's take a break and then resume for like questions and answers and discussions. I know there are some things that I went through too fast, so I'm sure you have questions on that. So let's take a break, inshallah. See you in 5 minutes. Sakallah. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let's get started. Questions, thoughts, answers. Anyone? Inshallah. Go ahead. See.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Roshan. Yes.
In the previous session last week, I have a question regarding Hikam 101.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to it there.
Yeah.
The translation is it says whenever he alienates you from his creatures, realize that he wants to open for you the door of intimacy with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that alienation, is that a physical alienation, or is it like mental or
It's
spiritual?
Spiritual. It's a spiritual alienation. Yeah. It's a spiritual alienation.
spiritual.
Yeah, in that you're not thinking about anything else, and you're not concerned about anything else. He's removed all that from you, and so he's opened up a pathway or a doorway to grow closer to him. And you can find yourself in such situations whereby you're not concerned about anything, there's no stress on you, there's no anything nagging or troubling you. It's sort of like a free open. Now the door is there, it's been open for you. It's you have to step through and dedicate that moment to him, basically. Yeah, but he's the one who has opened, he's the one who's freed you up from all the difficulties around you. And so now you're able to give thought to him. Yeah.
Now, does the people around you, like your family, your friends, your neighbors, the one you interact with daily, would they see you as like strange? Like, I won't say weird, but
Yeah.
you will be like, I don't know how to say it. You will not be in the same routine as them.
Yeah, there will be a change in your general behavior, especially if you actually engage in that moment when you're getting that opportunity and you engage. Like people will make a comment even sometimes, oh, nowadays he's become a bit more practicing as a Muslim. People will make comments like that sometimes. But yeah, it is, you are going to be alienated. That's what it means, right? أو حشك. You're going to be separated from the norms of things around you. So there will be a noticeable change in you, and people will notice that change.
So you'll be a stranger, basically.
You will be, yeah, you will be like a stranger, and it will be curious because though it is a spiritual isolation, whatever happens in a spiritual state, whatever happens in your psychology, will always manifest in the physical world around you. Any sense of isolation internal will manifest in a sense of isolation external. So people will notice a change in you. They'll notice a change in your behavior, in your routine, in the things that you do. Some might question just to understand what's this new person that I'm seeing. And then others, they have perversion in their hearts, so they'll make nasty comments at you. That's going to be there. And there's also indicatives that you are on the right path. Like you get these negative comments towards you, you're on the right path, and you embrace it even more. You get positive comments on that, you're on the right path. You use that as a positive reinforcement, as an encouragement.
Okay. Can I continue, or someone else can ask again?
If there's someone else, I don't think there's anyone else. Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, Roshan, you can continue, please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Said. On Hikam 110, is it the same as, if I write it that way, the outward is the same as the inward? Basically, the inward is what Allah commands you. It's Allah's commands on you, and I'm thinking of the inward as being your ruh, the spirit. So Allah commands the spirit. Now, if I guess your heart is not clean, you haven't gone through that process of purification, you will not be able to get that. Like you will not get that command. You won't understand it, and you won't even recognize it, right, as an inward, and which means that you'll miss on it. Now, am I correct to say that Allah's command on our ruh is an inward?
Allah's command is something that has to be obeyed. The command corresponds with obedience or disobedience to the command. That obedience is manifest, meaning the obedience has to be manifest. So if He commands you to pray, then you don't just say, oh, I'm praying spiritually. and yet he has commanded you to stand in prayer and to prostrate in prayer and to ruku. So the command is fulfillment in manifest reality. So obedience to the command is always in the action. To obey the command is to perform the action that the command is coming in. You see, a commanding, this is even in speech, like for example, you've got a commanding article, what's also known as an imperative. Like if I say stand up, right, that's a command in language. Oh, you don't just sit there and say, no, brother, I've obeyed your command in my heart, don't worry. And you keep on sitting. It doesn't work like that. You see, like if you want to obey my command, then you stand up physically. So the command is always associated with obedience to the command or disobedience to the command, and that's a physical manifestation. But the inward is more in recognition or in realization that He is Allah. You see? And therefore, if He is Allah, He is Al-Akbar. And if He is Al-Akbar, then you are Abduhu, you are His servant. So it is realization internally, a state of submissiveness. So some people can be, performing the deed in the outward, but then in the inward, they've not accepted Him as sovereign. These people would be called munafiq. So they're showing a face in the outward of obedience, but then they're not showing internally, they're not accepting Allah as sovereign. So the internal aspect is a state of realization. It's to realize He is one, it's to realize He is Allah, and it is to be in a state of submission internally. In the externally, that's how it manifests. Submission internally manifests externally as obedience to His will and His command. I hope that makes sense, yeah.
Now on Hikam 112, regarding the will. Now, is the will the same as dhikr?
A wird falls in the category of dhikr. Dhikr is a very broad term. So dhikr is like the genus, right? And then awrad fall in that. Talabul ilm falls under dhikr also. And some also argue that talabul ilm falls under ibadah. So it's part of worshipful acts. But dhikr is a broad term. So a wird falls under, is one of the components in dhikr. So a wird could be, a dhikr is not, this is what, understanding it really. Imam al-Ghazali makes a lamentation on this, he says, he was talking about scholars at his time. He said they've reduced dhikr to tasbih, and they've reduced fiqh to jurisprudence, and they've reduced tawheed to aqidah matters. You see, that reduction methodology, that's not a sound epistemology in Islam. It's to understand that there is much more to it. So dhikr is not just like you're sitting with a tasbih. That's one type of dhikr. Doing a daily recitation of the Quran in order to complete, let's say, a khatam of the Quran every month, that's one kind of dhikr. And then doing specific awrad is like you're doing, let's say, Surah Yasin every day. That's a wird of the Quran. You see? Or you do like Ayatul Kursi, and then the last 3 ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah. Then you do Surah Al-Kafirun, Ikhlas, Falaq, and Nas, what you call the 4 Qul, right? And then you do Salawat ala Nabi, what's also called Durood al-Sharif. That's a wird. That's a package of different adhkar as a package. That's different. So there are different kinds of awrad. Some are there, you will find them in the hadith, are awrad that the Prophet ﷺ did. Others are there in our tradition that some scholars, they did. And then different scholars wrote books on awrad, different kinds of awrad that they derive from the sunnah, from the hadith. So there are different types of awrad, but all of them collectively fall under dhikr because that's essentially what you're doing. Whenever you're doing a wird, you are doing a dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it is in something praiseworthy as learning the knowledge that will help you understand revelation, for example, or it is in reciting the revelation itself, or it is in mimicking the prophetic path, right? So it's also all part of dhikr. I hope that
So
makes
the
sense.
word, yeah, so the word is something that you do repetitively, right? And the dhikr is something more vast. It could be anything, even if you don't repeat it like continually, like every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could look at it in that sense. Yeah. A dhikr could be anything. Like you could do tasbih today, maybe tomorrow you just do a study of one of the surahs, or the next day you do something else. That would still be part of dhikr. But a wird is something that you sort of do it repetitively and you do it, consistently, not just repetitively, but consistently. Like you recite
So
Suratul Kahf on Friday, that's a wird.
now, is a good habit that you do routinely, is that a will?
It's a very good habit, yeah. Sorry, it's not a wird per se. A wird is more related to like du'as and supplications. Like if you're let's say if you're in the habit of doing wudu before every salah, even though you are in wudu and you still do a wudu every salah, that's not a wird. That's ubudiyah. That falls under practice of ibadah. That's an act of ibadah. It's not a wird.
So if I'm reciting, say, the word of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Habib, say say after Fajr, that would be considered like a word if I do it like every day after Fajr.
Yeah, it's in and of itself, it's a word. So even if you do it like once in a while, it's still a word. It's not necessarily have to be every day after Fajr. Even if you just did it once.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. I'm done for now. Let the others ask questions
No.
and I'll come back later, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
وإياك. Okay.
Thank you, Roshan. I don't see any other questions.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ustad.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sorry for the just erupted or just coming in. I didn't know how to put my hands up. Yeah, so I have a question. My question is can you just clarify when the first operation of the mind and the second operation of the mind? Can you just clarify that with me?
Okay. So the mind has got the aql has got three basic operations, and these are hierarchical operations. One is the foundation, one is an intermediary, and one is now much more broader and more complex. So the three operations of the mind are grasping a concept, what's in Arabic would be called tasawwur, grasping a concept. The second operation is ratification or judgment, declaring something of it, affirming its truth or negating its falsehood or something like that. And then the third operation is reasoning or qiyas, reasoning out. So the first operation of the mind deals with terms and their definitions, because the term gives you the concept. Once you have a term with which to associate with an object, if there's an object, because psychologically or in reality, you cannot take a physical object and put it inside your head to know it. If you want to know something, you can't take a physical object and put it inside your head. You need something that will act as an intermediary, that you will associate. Your mind can associate with that object. And that something is a symbol. That symbol is the term. So the term could be its name, could be something that is used to describe it, could be something that's used to define it. Not the definition itself, but something that's used to define it. That's a term. So what is it called? You want to know what is it? That's the question that's associated with the first operation of the mind. What is it? So you can know what it is
Right.
and have a concept of it in your mind to grasp it. The second operation is what we just finished right now, which is the propositions, contradictions, and conversions. The second operation is called tasdeeq, ratifying or concluding. It begins with a proposal, it ends with a ratification. So when someone makes a proposal about something, then you affirm whether it's true or false, or whether you need to contradict it. So it may be false, then you put a contradiction against that. Say, no, it's not that, it's this. You contradict it. Or you convert it before you contradict it, or you convert it to make it more easier to ratify. Whatever, that's the process that you would go through from proposal to its affirmation, meaning or its ratification. That is tasdeeq, right? That's the second operation of the mind. Now the proposal is built with terms. The proposition has got terms, two terms specifically, the subject and the predicate. So one term is a subject, the other one is a predicate. So if I say Zaid is a writer, then Zaid is a term that indicates that object, because I cannot take that object and put it in my head, but I can know that object by knowing his name. So his name is Zaid. Zaid becomes a term in that sentence, and that term is the subject. Then a writer, if I say a writer, you understand something by it. You have the concept of what a writer is, right? So that becomes now the predicate in the sentence, and I can make a proposition out of that. Zaid is a writer. And then somebody else might say, no, Zaid is not a writer. And then we can have this back and forth and then verify, oh, wait, look, Zaid is a writer, he can write. Then we can take that conclusion from that, which is now the proposition that's been attested to, that becomes now a premise that will be used in the third operation of the mind when you want to reason it out now. So let's reason it out. How is Zaid the writer? Well, he wrote this and he wrote that. Well, just because he wrote that doesn't make him a writer. Well, you could argue and say that if he wrote this and he wrote it to the standards, then that makes him a writer. You see, we can do this. We can go into the argumentation of it. That's qiyas. That's now next week, inshallah, the third operation of the mind. I hope you got that.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. See, okay. One more question I
Mhm.
have in regards to what Roshan was saying. In terms of weird. Weird is it? Weird?
Yeah,
Is that
word.
how you say it? Weird? Yeah. So reading Darul Sharif on a daily basis, would that be weird?
Without what? What's the last part?
Reading Darul Sharif
Uh-huh.
on a daily basis, would that be considered as weird?
Yeah, that would be a word. That's separate from what you would recite in the salah. In the salah, it's part of ibadah. You have to remember that. So what you're reciting when you close the salah, whatever is within the salah, that's not a word. That is salah. That's its own entity, right? Yeah. And then anything you do extra now, like Durud Sharif, some people would recite that before going to sleep, for example. That's a good thing. That becomes a word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know how they have like the booklet Darul Sharif 100 times or 40 times. So if you do that every day,
Yeah.
that becomes a weird.
That becomes a word.
Okay. Okay. Jazakallah.
No. Wa iyak. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. If there's no more questions, then we can end, inshallah. So next week we will do the qiyas, and I'm going to try and get through more of the aphorisms, the hikam. I'm hoping we will be able to finish by the time we finish the course, inshallah ta'ala. So let's end here, inshallah. Or is there a question? No? Anything?
You have more time?
Go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead. You have a question?
Um, because last week I was a bit sleepy, and I want to catch up. Like have some time here. I was at the mosque, and there were two group of people debating on one issue, and the issue was when the khutbah has started, when the imam is on the minbar and started the khutbah, and if somebody came late, one group was saying you're not allowed to pray the Tahiyatul Masjid. You have to sit down and listen. And their argument was the khutbah is part of the prayer of Jum'ah. And say that because Jum'ah is 2 rak'ah, the khutbah is the first 2 rak'ah, and then we pray another 2 rak'ah, which make it 4, which would be like the whole prayer. So he said you're not allowed to pray, you sit down and listen. And then there was another group that say that there was a Sahabi that came when Rasulullah was delivering the khutbah, and he went and sit down. I don't know about the hadith because I'm not a student of the hadith. He went and sit down, and Rasulullah asked him to get up and pray 2 rak'ah. And they were saying because of that, then even though the khutbah has started, you still have to pray the 2 rak'ah for Tahiyatul Masjid before you listen to the khutbah. So those were the two groups arguing, and both of them probably are right. I'm not sure, but when I look at their argument and I see that the Sahabi went down and sit down first, which means that the general rule would be you will not pray when the khutbah has started. And at that time, when Rasulullah asked him to get up, it was an exception to the rule. It was not the rule itself, but it was an exception to the rule. Now, there could be a khatib that will order somebody to get up and pray, and that would be also an exception to the rule. So the rule would be if you came late, you will sit down and listen to the khutbah.
Right.
Is my reasoning good in this sense?
Let me answer you next week on this, because it will fall under it. I think this actually it's good you raised that, because I think it will be a good example to demonstrate how reasoning is done in fiqh and in usul, and how the rulings would be applied and how the exceptions would be examined. But it will fall under syllogisms. So let me explain that inshallah next weekend. I'll start with this. I'll start with this example, and then we'll use it as a segue into the next group, inshallah. So jazakallah for bringing that up. So I'll start with that, inshallah. It's a good question. It's a very good question, and it's a bit tricky because you kind of need to look at the arguments of to and fro, and there are differences of opinion on that also. So that will be a good example to show how reasoning is done in Islam, in Sharia, for example. Yeah. No.
Can I ask one more question quickly?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you know how we did the charts for formal logic and traditional logic, and we broke it off into different sections?
Mm-hmm.
So now that everything that we're studying, are we actually following that chart?
So far, yes, because now we're going to go into formal logic. So all we've been doing so far has been material logic. So we looked at the 5 predicables, the 10 categories, that was material logic. And then we looked at the modes of like we'll be going into modes of argumentation. So all that we have been doing so far has been material logic. Now we're going to go into formal logic. We're going to build a form now, the syllogisms. So yeah, we've been following that chart all this time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That the chart was just like the forest to give you, okay, there's this branch here, there's this tree here, this connects to this and this connects to that. So we've done all those other sections. Now we're doing formal logic.
Okay, inshallah.
No. Okay. So if there's no more questions, inshallah, we can end. Tamam. سبحانك وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.